everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michaela and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap up. You can probably tell from my voice I'm a little bit under the weather, so this will be a bit of a shorter video, but the books that I read this month were top tier amazing and I just had to share them with you. I couldn't miss an opportunity to make this video and talk about them. So I was very kindly approached by the author of this first book for a digital copy on Instagram and I loved it so much that I had to buy my own copy for my shelves, and that is Partner Track by Kitten. This is a workplace, rivals to lovers, only one bed, snowed in, forced proximity, as well as having an absolute fucking mess of a heroine who was fine before the male character came along and does really well with him, but like could survive without him, you know what I mean? Purdy is a lawyer. She's working in this law firm, she's stagnant in her career, and she is sent to this kind of like little bumfuck town, battle for this case, and like even the opposition are sort of saying, you know, like, oh, they didn't really send their best, you know, like, and brightest, and the opposing counsel is Carter. And Carter is like a filthy talking beta, holy fuck. I love that, like they live and make it rent free. So after everything happens in court that day, she tries to get out of the town and flights are cancelled. Carter is also at the airport, also trying to leave, and one thing leads to another. They have to share a hotel room together and they hook up. They don't have sex. There is some really good sort of scenes that don't involve sex, which is amazing. And then when Purdy gets back to work, she's like, well, that's fine. Like, I'll never see that person again. You know, she can kind of regale the funny story to her best friend, Lucille. But it turns out that Carter has been hired for the job that Purdy, by all rights, probably should have. It's very obvious that she's not been given the job, probably because she's a woman. She's just not respected enough within her workplace. And this book is fucking amazing. I've actually reread this twice. This month I liked it so much and I freaking love it. It's so cute. It's an amazingly amazing cover. Amazingly amazing. Man, I'm delirious with fever, but I'm not delirious about my feelings on this book. And I love it so much. I definitely think you should check out Partner Track, especially if you liked The Hating Game. You'll see this coming up in a trope recommendation video very shortly. The day that I fell down a hole of this author would be an absolute fucking understatement. Walking along minding my own business, and all of a sudden I came across the book Sleet, Kitten by S.J. Tilley. So this is the story of Caitlin and Jackson. Caitlin is at a party and she's sort of not having a really good time. She kind of sneaks off, goes into this basement, stumbles across this really gorgeous guy, and it turns out he's actually the owner of the apartment. Her cousin is campaigning for office and the cousin knew someone who knew Jackson. So Jackson is a really famous hockey player in their town of Minnesota. My hockey is basically a religion. Caitlin didn't really know too much about him, but they just kind of click and she ends up falling asleep while they're watching The Godfather. We've all been there, babe, honestly, never seen it, never want to, don't at me. And so Jackson kind of tracks her down and he really likes her. It's just like, these are the books where the guy falls first and the girl has a little bit of resistance. So this is, like, this should be the new Elle Kennedy. I don't want to hear anything else about Elle Kennedy. Like, it's done, it's over. I want to be hearing about these books because the next book was my fucking favorite. I'm gonna tell you why. Sleet Sugar by S.J. Tilley. Now, something about me, guys, when I was young, before I even realized what like shipping was, like wanting people to be together, I was obsessed with Dean Portman from D2, The Mighty Ducks. Zach from this book is like Dean Portman grown up. Like, he is everything you want. He's even been playing in fucking Scandinavia before he comes back to the US, lands at the Minnesota team where Jackson plays. Jackson's the captain, Zach's new captain, and Isabel is the coach's daughter. So immediately, whoop! We know some shit's gonna go down. But they first meet because Isabel in the first book kind of makes a pass at Jackson. He's not really interested. Caitlin and her best friend Megan are like, you need to get out there, you need to do things. So she downloads a dating app, decides to have a one-night stand with this guy. They're not going to talk about their families, they're not going to talk about their careers, and she hooks up with Zach, runs away while he's still asleep, and walks into work on Monday morning to meet the new player, and it's Zach. Is there anything better? Is there anything better than that? The last book in the Sleet series is Sleet, Banshee. This one is Caitlin from the first book, her best friend. Obviously, like the funniest thing. So Jackson calls Caitlin Kitten, Zach calls Isabel Sugar. The male character in this calls her Banshee because she's like, don't call me baby. So he's just like, I'm gonna call you Banshee then. You know what, the nickname actually does really matter. I'm not gonna lie. Not set at the same time. So this one, things happen in this book that I'm obviously not gonna talk about. Sort of maybe like a year and a bit after the events of this book. So there's a bit of a build up to this. You get a little bit of a backstory. And the male love interest, his name is Ash, which is short for Sebastian, which I think is actually so cool because obviously I've got kids and I can't even tell you the amount of fucking Sebastians, Bastions, whatever. Look at me, I'm falling apart, guys. I'm not doing good, but I'm here. Yeah, definitely loved this one as well. They are all free on Kindle Unlimited as well as the other 4 books by S.J. Tilley that I'm going to be speaking about too. But I really, really rate the Sleet series. I love sports romance. These are a little bit funnier. The next one that I'm going to talk about is a little bit sort of darker, a little bit more kind of romantic suspense. And then the last one is almost like a small town vibe to it. So I absolutely love these covers, but my ring light has a real issue with them, and it's got Mr. Sin by S.J. Tilley. So this is a story of Sasha. Sasha works in public relations, and she has been hired to really launch this company public. So it has ties to organized crime, but the company has managed to rehab its image, and this guy is very mysterious. Nobody really knows him. So before she goes back to Minnesota, everything's set in the same universe in S.J. Tilley books. She's in Vegas for a conference, kind of getting a suss out of like what had been previously happening. And she meets this guy and she's like, oh, well, you know, like, I'm on vacation, why not? So she hooks up with him, and not realizing until a week later that he is the mysterious Mr. Sin, who nobody really knows who he is. And she's got to introduce him to the world and kind of show the world that he's not like some badass gangster anymore. So this was really good. It's kind of more like a billionaire romance, sort of romantic suspense, because there are some high stakes elements in this. I don't want to give too much away. I like you guys to kind of discover these things for yourselves, but it's definitely a little bit grittier, a little bit darker. After that, we've got Sin 2. So Sin 2 is the story of Lorenzo, who is Vincent's cousin and head of security. And he is like 6'8". He is like as close as you can get to monster porn, like, you know, contemporary romance, because they're always making Shrek jokes about him. It's pretty funny. A woman named Beth who has a bit of a past. We kind of discover it during the course of the book. Oh my god, stop. The ring light, it's just upsetting me. Probably my favorite, purely for the banter in the relationship. Beth is a physical therapist. Lorenzo is obviously a man mountain, so he's like working out a lot. So that's kind of how he meets her at the gym after he's been told by a mysterious uncle to kind of keep an eye on this one. And then we finish up the Sin trilogy with Miss Sin, and this is about John. John is Sasha from the first book. It is her brother, and he's an FBI agent, but please don't hold that against him. John sort of becomes enamored with a girl named Nora, who volunteers at the domestic violence shelter that is established in the first book. And she is someone who is really, really in her shell, and she just kind of needs to break free of it. Like, there's a few things in her life that are sort of holding her back, and she just decides no more when she sees John and has this sort of reaction to him, and she's just like, you know what? Things need to change. And there is a very hot scene where Nora gets something's pierced. Finished off my S.J. Tilley binge, and I'm so sad because now I've read her entire backlist and I'm hanging out for the next book in this trilogy, and that is Smoky, Darling. This is the small town vibes sort of one, with this girl named Eloise who had a crush on Beckett when she was really little. I think she was about 7 and he was maybe 15-ish, I want to say. Obviously nothing like weird happens. That would be so fucked up. So fucked up. She's playing kickball in the street one day that's really cute, and she gets hurt by this like older sort of bully boy out and just kicks the ball, and like it goes like, you know, nearly a whole block and just knocks the kid out basically. So yeah, she was immediately in love with him from that day. Flash forward a little bit to when she's 15 and she's sort of trying to get his attention at a party, but he's like 23 at the time. He's just like obviously still not interested because she's a fucking child. And then he sees her again when she's 18. She embarrasses herself by spilling hot coffee all over herself, and she's like, that's it, fuck this. And then we are with Eloise when she's 30. She's living back in her town, and she is chaperoning some kids on a camping trip, and the kind of like nature man is Beckett. Eloise is grown up now, and Beckett is just like, holy fucking hell, there she is. There is a really hot scene in a tent. I super loved this one, and like I said, I can't wait for Latte Darling, which is Eloise's best friend who owns a franchise of beanbags. So Beanbag Coffee appears in the Sleet series. It also appears in the Sin trilogy and in this one too. So kind of like they're all in the same world, all under the same umbrella. I knocked them over really quickly. I read all 7 in the space of 4 days. but I am a psycho. We do know this. So let me know if you read any of the SJ Tilly books, or if you read the Kitten books, or if you're going to read any of these books that I have coming up. If you are new here, I would love to have you as a subscriber, so make sure you hit that red button. You watched my Lifeline Book Fest haul. I'll link it up there if you haven't yet. I went on a massive thing of trying to find all of Karen Rose's books, and I found all but 2. So the first book that I read by Karen Rose this month was Don't Tell. This opens up with a car being pulled out of a river, and it is the car of a missing wife of a cop, Mary Grace Winters, who had disappeared some years earlier. She is the classic battered woman that no one had really helped. She'd been in hospital for a multitude of things, you know, typical kind of like broken arms, walked into a door, klutzy, fell over. Really big event that happened is that she had broken her back in about 3 or 4 places, and it was basically thought that she was going to have a disability her whole life. She would be having issues with mobility and things like that. On the car, they're looking for the bodies of Mary Grace and her son, and her husband, who is still a thug, still a piece of shit, is on the hunt because he thinks that they've been abducted. What actually happened is Mary Grace has reinvented herself as Caroline in Chicago. She rehabilitated herself, moved, she faked their disappearance, and then the husband has kind of figured out what's going on and he wants them back. It is a game of cat and mouse, but there is also a love interest for Caroline, and I just find these books the perfect mix of sort of like suspense and romance. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a great opening to the series. It really set the pace and kind of gave a great introduction to Karen Rose's sort of writing style. You know that the husband is actively pursuing her. Really that mystery element of like, who done it? What's going on? What's going to happen next? Like, it's that kind of really anxiety inducing feeling of, holy fuck, you need to get the fuck out of here, bitch. Like, she doesn't realize that the car has been found until it's probably too late, and then the stakes are really raised. In that book, we meet Special Agent Stephen Thatcher, and he is the one who's investigating Mary Grace's disappearance and sort of discovers that Caroline is her and everything that's going on in that book. And then we move on to his book. So his wife had previously passed away. He has 3 sons. His oldest son has started acting out, and his teacher has reached out to Stephen and said, hey, you know, something's going on with your son. Like, in the past month, he has gone from a straight A student to essentially getting D's in all of my classes. What the fuck is going on? While that's happening, there is also a bunch of murders of teenage girls who are brutally disfigured, dumped in places, their heads are shaved. It's a really predatory attack. There's also a detective who comes into play who is from a different town where these murders had sort of happened before, and he thought that the person who had done it had gotten away with it. So this one was probably my favorite out of the 3 that I've read so far. I am so excited to continue on with the rest of the series. I'm almost tempted to do just like a whole month of reading Karen Rose. I definitely will go more in depth to them when I have read them all. The 23rd book comes out in August, and I'm hopefully going to be caught up by then. So fingers crossed for me on that one. So this is one of the ones that I had to buy, and it is I'm Watching You. And it's a story of Kitten Mayhew. She is a district attorney prosecutor, and the people that she has tried to prosecute but are obviously guilty and have gotten away on like technicalities, evidence disappearing, witnesses not wanting to testify, start to be murdered and delivered to her, and in places signed your humble servant. And we sort of get the view of the killer person that they're kind of avenging, and how they're doing it for her. They're doing it for her because something had happened to this person, obviously, and they hadn't received the justice that they thought was adequate. So Kristen's love interest is Abe. He is undercover for about 5 or 6 years. He's someone with a past, as is Kristen. The really great thing about all of these books that I read this month is that all of the characters were like over the age of 30. They sort of had their like own problems, baggage, things like that. It was really realistic. I absolutely loved it. This was probably my least favorite of the ones that I've read so far. I think it was because I was kind of stopping and starting. Really excited to continue on with my Karen Rose books, like I said. So that is everything that I read in the month of June. Thank you so much for sticking with me during this one, guys. I hope that you had a wonderful reading month. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite book of the month was. I think I'm going to be really cheeky and say all of them. They're all just so good. I couldn't pick just one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you're having a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Lots of love, hugs, and kisses. Mwah! Bye.